Hello and welcome to Cafe New Canadians. This is a virtual event series where we feature industry experts, career coaches, and immigrant achievers to share their stories of success and also offer guidance on how to design the career of your dreams in Canada. Today, we're going to be featuring a guest expert, a personal branding expert, to talk about how to build your personal brand in a virtual world. Cafe New Canadians is brought to you by New Canadians, which is a TV and web show for newcomers in Canada. We bring you trusted resources and information on employment, settlement, education, and just how to navigate your life in this wonderful country that we call home. You can watch our content on Omni Television. You can watch us on our website, newcanadianstv.tv. We also have a YouTube channel that you can check out, youtube.com/newcanadian. And I'm your host for this evening, Vasudha Sharma, and I'm very pleased to welcome our guest expert for this evening, Jenny Okonkwo. She is a personal branding coach and a workshop facilitator. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll also be, I want to inform our viewers that today we're going to be taking your questions live. You can post your questions to Jenny as they come to you. Type in the Q&A tab on Zoom if you're joining us here, or you could type in your questions on the live chat option on YouTube because we are being live streamed there as well. Okay, so let's begin. Jenny, how are you keeping? How are you doing these days?
Hi, Fazuda. Thank you so much for the invitation. Yes, I'm doing my best to stay safe and just follow the guidance that we've been given. And I'm just delighted to be here and really looking forward to a great conversation for the next hour. And just want to give a shout out to all the phenomenal frontline workers in healthcare and essential services that are doing their utmost to keep the rest of us safe.
Absolutely, Jenny. Now let's deep dive into the topic of our webinar today, building a personal brand in a virtual world. Now, Jenny, according to you, when it comes to successfully navigating the professional world, you need to understand who you are and what you stand for in terms of your personal brand. Before we talk about that, let's just start with the basics. What is a personal brand?
Absolutely. So I think the best thing to do is for me to share my screen, and I will take everyone through some of these important conversation points. So here we go. Okay, so what is a personal brand? Okay, so let me just get myself ready here. So the way to think of a personal brand is it's not just one unit of one thing. It's a culmination of so many things that really make us up as human beings. So it's the sum total of all our experiences, both personal and professional, our interactions, relationships, the things that we learn through life, as well as, of course, the harder types of our character as human beings in terms of our skills, which of course encompass, academic credentials, licenses, certificates, but also attributes. What's Jenny like as a person? A certificate doesn't tell people what you're like as a person. It's things like, is she reliable? If you invite her somewhere, does she get there on time? Those are attributes. And then capabilities is about the things that you do well under any set of circumstances. So those are two of the three facets that make up one's personal brand. And then one that I think is sort of fundamental and underlying to the whole of what we've just talked about are, of course, things like your own core values, your beliefs, your principles. What is your life code that you live by? What's your personal vision and mission? Where do you see yourself in the future? So it's the whole sum of these things that make up one's personal brand. And so continuing on.
So how do you make your personal brand work for your professional life? What role does
Sure.
a personal brand play today in your professional success?
Exactly. So really, I think having done the work, and one thing is that it's very much a marathon and not a sprint, because of course, as you go through life, your personal brand will keep changing, because as you have more life experiences, different encounters, exposures to different situations, you have to keep honing and fine-tuning what it is that you represent and what you stand for. So in my case today, my personal brand is quite different from what it was when I arrived in Canada almost 15 years ago, because I've had a whole set of professional and personal experiences that have now culminated into where I've got to today. So how it shows up for me and how it plays out for me is that people know me for creating and identifying professional and leadership development opportunities for people in my networks. They know me for giving back to the finance and accounting profession. They know me for being very passionate about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And they know me for really wanting to help immigrant professionals reconnect to their former careers. So if you look at the type of activities that I'm doing, all of those things play out. So that's how my personal brand shows up in my professional life on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And Jenny, many would consider having a personal brand to probably being an entrepreneur or having one's own business. But if people are employed in the services or they're just a professional working in a corporate house, is a personal brand, having one, is that important to their success?
Absolutely. So a personal brand absolutely can be for a product. So for instance, Coca-Cola with the strapline, the real thing, Brita water filter, the difference is clear. Absolutely. So a brand, people know it in everyday life as consumers for goods and services. We all know how we feel if we buy a good or service and it has proclaimed that it's going to do a certain thing or fulfill a certain need, and it doesn't. We know how that makes us feel and how it leaves us feeling. That same philosophy applies to people. So for instance, at work, how are you perceived at work? How do you show up at work? Do people see you as someone who is who delivers when they say that you're going to deliver? These types of attributes absolutely show up for us as human beings as well. And it's important that we have our own personal brand. Otherwise, someone else will give us a personal brand that we may not like or that does not relate to who we are or who we stand for. We have to own our own story.
That's an excellent point. Jenny, so you say that the core of your personal brand is actually identifying your USP, your unique selling proposition. How do you go about, peeling the onion layers and, identifying, acknowledging that this is what I stand for, this is what I'm great at?
Exactly. So I'm going to take you through the slides because I've actually laid that out. I'll just quickly talk about why it's important to develop one, because many people may not understand how critical it is, particularly at this time. I think in some ways we've been given a gift amongst this adversity and obviously fear and uncertainty with the extraordinary times that we are in. What it's done is it's given us that opportunity to just press the pause button and do a bit of self-reflection and self-evaluation. So what I would say to everyone on the chat is, if you were someone who was commuting maybe to a place of study or a place of work, and now of course you're at home, try to capitalize on this extra time that we don't normally have to really look at yourself, do some self-awareness, some self-reflection, with a view to developing or improving or honing your own personal brand. Because what it does in terms of the workplace and any professional interaction you have, and also personal, is that the first thing it does, it absolutely creates trust. Because when your intentions are genuine and well known to others, people will bring you into their space and they will bring you into their confidence. So, you know, we've heard about those stories where people say, you know what, I just can't make out that person. I really don't understand, you know, where they're coming from. You know, those types of statements are statements where people don't feel that the trust has been generated, and so they don't know where they stand with those people. They don't understand those people's intentions. It also builds connections in terms of networking, exposure to opportunities. Everything comes through other people. A lot of what you do in terms of opportunities comes through others. And so building networks is what happens when people understand who you are and what you stand for, because people will bring people to you. They'll say, oh, you know what, so-and-so is great at this. I think I'm going to hook you up with this person. I think you guys could collaborate on something. And that leads to credibility. If people understand who you are and what you stand for, your credibility just grows infinitely because people get you. And then confidence, of course, because you know who you are and you know what you stand for, and you've got a really good take on what you're good at, what you're not so good at, it builds confidence because you know your strengths and you always go to areas where you can capitalize on those strengths, use those strengths to help others, and also minimize your weaknesses because it gives you the confidence to say, you know what, this is actually, I'm going to call this out. This is a weakness for me. So I now need to go and connect or find how I can get help to turn this weakness into a strength. And then authenticity. People cannot stand fake people. People know when someone is being fake. Oscar Wilde once said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. So be genuine, be authentic. And, you know, that's the essence to phenomenal relationship building. And so moving on from that, and you mentioned this in our earlier conversation, Vasudha, you know, when you have gone through that journey of really understanding who you are and what you represent, it's much easier to then leverage professional opportunities because then you understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. If you're someone, for instance, who wants to become a public speaker, and you know that you're terrified of public speaking and you've done some analysis of yourself, and you're then going to say, okay, I actually need to maybe join Toastmasters, or if you're in a profession that has a particular professional body, okay, next time there's an event, I'm going to ask if I can speak. And you start to work on those areas of opportunity. Likewise, if you know what you stand for and what you represent in the workplace, you can actually have a conversation with somebody that says, I have these skills. I haven't had a chance to show them to you, but here's in other avenues where I have shown these skills. Might be in a volunteer role. And because you have shown strength in that particular role and someone in that volunteer capacity can vouch for you, you can then take that into the workplace. And I've seen that happen many, many times. And the key thing as well about owning your own and developing your own personal brand, and I mentioned this in our earlier conversation a few moments ago, Stevie Smith, chairman of British Council, said last year at the annual Women in Global Leadership Summit Europe in London, UK, you absolutely have to own your own narrative. Do not allow anyone else to tell your own story, because no one else can tell your story the way you can, because you're you. It's the story of you. And so for those of us who do not take the time to analyze ourselves, ask the hard question, and it's a very hard question: who am I? What am I good at? What am I not so good at? What do I stand for? Someone else will do that for us, and they're going to put us in a box, and we're going to feel uncomfortable in that box.
Right.
And then the next thing as well is, you know, standing out from the crowd, because once you are aware of what your personal brand is, you can then go after certain opportunities in a unique way that others who haven't done that work and don't have that brand identity, then they're just a generic commodity. You know, it's almost like, you know, No Name and Heinz, you know, that type of situation. So again, how do you differentiate yourself? And you differentiate yourself by having a strong personal brand.
Is this your path to actually identifying your USP, which we were going to come to?
Yes, so that is an overview. And so in terms of identifying the USP, you have to start from the basics. So you have to start from, you know, how do you start building your brand? So the first thing to note is any
Actually,
goal.
Jenny, before we go into those details, let's quickly just survey our audience.
Sure.
And where are they from, and what is their goal regarding this webinar that they're watching? I want to quickly take up a poll question. So you can, yeah, that's the poll question. Where are you in your career journey? Let us know. Are you a professional working in a day job? Are you at the manager level, or are you an executive director, or any of the above? Or are you an independent contractor? Where are you in your career journey? Just punch in your answers, and we'd love to know more, and that will give us insight into answering these questions today. Okay, Jenny, coming back to USP.
Sure. So going back to the slides.
I think we'll wait for the poll to end before we go back to your slides.
Sure.
Okay, so 56% of our viewership today are in the professional space. 31% are managers. Yeah, that's the big breakup of the audience today. What does that mean to you, Jenny? The demographic that we have today joining us, is personal brand important to them?
Yeah, it's very interesting, the poll and who has joined us. What it tells me is that personal branding, which is something that is very apparent to me anyway, it's certainly important to everybody. And also it's something that we need to keep developing at whatever level that we are. So the fact that we see some executives on the show, on the chat, that's telling me that these individuals absolutely understand that the personal branding journey is a marathon and not a sprint. And so at every level in your career, you need to press the pause button, self-reflect, self-evaluate. And so it's good to see that cross range of experience levels are on the chat.
I'd like to remind our viewers to keep sending in your questions. You can type on the Zoom tab. You can also post your questions on YouTube. We are being live streamed there.
And so now, sure. And so now going to deep dive now, Vasudha, into your question around USP. So the first thing to understand is that a goal without a plan is just a wish. And that's a quote that I've taken because I think many of us have lofty goals, but without a plan, it will be really hard for us to actually get there, particularly as this is a journey. So with that in mind, what we first need to understand is what are some of those key questions that we need to be asking ourselves? Okay, so we've spoken a little bit about who am I? And that's not a simple question to answer. I'm going to deep dive into that in a minute with regards getting to the USP. What do I want? Where do I want to go? Where are the gaps? In other words, when you've determined who you are and where you want to go, what is the gap? And what are the gap closing measures that you need to take to help you get to your goal? And also, who can help you get there? So the first thing that I always recommend when I run my workshops is a SWOT analysis. Now, for many of us who have had an element of business administration within our studies or marketing management within our studies, we're going to be very familiar with this model. And this model is typically taught with regards to businesses and organizations and companies. However, it can also equally apply really, really well to us as individuals and helps us to get to the USP really, really well, because USP is about, what makes me unique? When people think of, X person, what is it that about that person that radiates a lot of positive thoughts and positive energy? So the strengths and weaknesses are internal to you. And again, those strengths will come from all of the things we mentioned in the earlier slide around skills, attributes, capabilities, relationships. If you are very good at building relationships, that is a huge strength, and every organization wants that, I can tell you. And certainly the way businesses are going, it's more towards the soft skills now, like relationship building, conflict management, emotional intelligence. All of those skills are actually trumping the harder skills, right? Because those are the ones that lead to sustainability within the workplace. Also understanding where you need to improve. That's critical as well. So really getting to that self-awareness before you can say, okay, this is what makes me unique. The opportunities are things that are really untapped potential and are typically external. They're beyond your control, or maybe they haven't happened to you yet because a certain life experience is yet to occur in the future. And again, same as threats. And threats is actually topical now because, of course, in this COVID-19 world that we're living in, threats are about external factors, again, that are beyond our control. And so the season that we are in today, absolutely reflects that. So the first thing is to do this SWOT analysis. And what I would recommend is that you do it in two ways. You do it yourself, and then you get some very trusted people within your network. They could be family members, they could be past colleagues. Show it to them. Say, is this how you see me? What else would you add? What on this chart have you not seen? Are there things that I perhaps haven't seen because it's a blind spot to me? So that way you get the full 360. It's impossible to do anything about your unique selling proposition until you understand who you are and you've gone through that exercise. And another technique that helps alongside with the SWOT analysis is something known as the Johari Window. This is a model that was developed quite some time ago now, 1955, by two psychologists, Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingman. Very, very powerful though. It's 4 types of self. So if we start from the bottom, so the hidden self. So this is the case where something that you know about yourself, but not known to others. Then you've got the open self, known to self, but also known to others externally too. The blind spot is something where you don't know, or you're not aware of that in your own character, but other people see it. And then the last one is not known to you and not known to others. So the last one, again, could be untapped potential, like it's a skill or an attribute that you have, but something, that life experience or that professional experience has not occurred yet for you to be able to suddenly pull this out and demonstrate that you have it. Classic example is when I founded Black Female Accountants Network 4 years ago. I had no idea before then if I could pull something like that off, if I could start a network, if I could find a phenomenal set of ladies to help me along that path, but it has happened. But at the time I didn't know. And because it's something I hadn't done before, no one else knew it either. It was totally uncharted territory. Likewise, the open self, known to others, people know I'm a CPA. I'm a CPA, other people know I'm a CPA, it's an open secret. Something that you know that others don't know, that's again the case where you have this skill or an attribute, but because you haven't necessarily done the work to understand who you are and what you represent, you may actually be blocking off opportunities where you could be demonstrating that skill to others, making it visible to others, and making others aware that you have this phenomenal skill set. And then the blind spot, again, is the typical one, which many of us have come across, where we get this compliment and we're like, oh, really? I didn't know that about myself. And then when 1, 2, 3 people say it, it's like, okay, so, this is also me. People see this happening. So this is a really great model to really start understanding who you are as you get closer to trying to understand what's unique about you, to be able to put together your unique selling proposition.
Right. Jenny, we have questions coming in. We have Shweta Siddharthan. She wants to know, can volunteering help her build her personal brand?
100%, absolutely fantastic question. So Sweta, there is no question that volunteering is a phenomenal way of building your personal brand. I do a number of things where I'm giving back to the finance and accounting profession. I also do some diversity and inclusion work. And through doing that, I have definitely improved my personal brand. People know me for being featured in magazine articles talking about strategic volunteering. The fact that I have helped others who volunteer. They're doing leadership roles, which now they can transfer those skills into the workplace and, be considered for higher roles, different types of opportunities, project roles. So volunteering is a phenomenal way to build your personal brand. Absolutely.
Okay. So we were coming to your unique selling proposition.
Sure. So basically, once you have taken those steps to understand who you are, the next thing is very much, okay, what is that gap? And throughout this whole process, make sure you're being yourself. As I said earlier, Oscar Wilde, be yourself, everyone else is taken. This is another great quote from Rachel Hollis. You, the real you, is no accident. So with that in mind, here's a 6-step action plan in terms of getting to your unique selling proposition. So as we've taken the time to discuss, which is so important because the bulk of it is who you are as a person, because until you can reach out, until you know that, it's impossible to reach out and ask for help. Because on what basis are you going to do that? People are going to say, well, who are you? What do you do? What drives you? What motivates you? People are going to flood you with those questions. And so you have to make sure that you're very clear and resolute and intentional across all those different facets, that you can have meaningful conversations with others. And so when you have discovered who you are, you then identify your goals. Remember the pre-planning question slide. What is it that you want? What is it that you want to achieve in life? Where is it that you want to get to? Everyone has a vision and a mission. It's just that not everyone has had the time or taken the time to just pause, reflect, and articulate what that is. So you need to identify what your goal is. Once you've done that, then you work out, okay, what is the gap? Here is who I am currently. Here's where I want to get to. What is that gap? When you identify what that gap is, and it might involve some training, it might involve some development, then you start to work out how you can go and get it. And so the next thing that you do is really understand, okay, that gap, what is the best way, what are the gap closing measures? So if I take myself, because I had launched this network and I knew that to get the word out, I had to get comfortable with speaking publicly. At the time I launched the network, I had never spoken publicly in my life. I was terrified of it, really scared, all of it. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, this is a volunteer network. This is not a company. We have such limited resources. If I don't go out there and pitch for this network, we will fail. So because I knew what my goal was, which is to make a difference within the accounting profession, the workplace, and the community, that helped me to define, okay, here are the steps that I need to take. So one of those steps was to approach my accounting bodies whenever they had a conference and put myself forward and say, you know what, I have a story to tell. Now, why did I feel confident in that? Remember, I've told you I had never spoken before. I was terrified of speaking. Yet I had the confidence to approach them and say, I have a really good story to tell because I had done that work around my personal brand. I knew what it was, that when I had a professional accomplishment at work, what the skills and the attributes that underlay those accomplishments. So that's the confidence coming out that I was telling you about. And then I started getting invited to speak. Once I started getting invited to speak, more exposure came to the network. More opportunities came to the network. So this is how you're able to, start to hone, your unique selling proposition. My unique selling proposition is around, as I mentioned, building and scaling diverse and inclusive workplaces, economic empowerment of newcomer professionals, helping them to reconnect with their careers, building a legacy for youth, in other words, for the future generation of business leaders, and also identifying and creating leadership and professional development opportunities for established and locally based professionals. That's where my world revolves. My world revolves around those pillars. So anything that I'm doing is always in line with those, and people understand that well. So again, the next step is getting help. So I kind of gave that in that example. I needed to start to get the message in terms of the work that we were doing out there. So I sought help. I contacted various professional bodies, newcomer service employment agencies. Oh, you've got a speed mentoring session. I'll come and I'll talk about, career pathways to become a CPA. You draw help by giving. So in that giving process, I'm also getting the help that I need to develop my own personal brand and get that exposure. Right. So and then, of course, along the way, you're getting feedback. Now, feedback takes many, many forms. It takes forms of testimonials, endorsements, even asking someone on a one-to-one, you know what, I'm thinking of approaching this. What do you think? This is how I think I'm going to pitch myself. I'm going to pitch myself along these pillars. Does it make sense? Sanity check that with somebody, right, that you trust.
Okay, so this 6-step action plan.
Yeah.
We have questions coming in, Jenny, regarding this.
Sure.
There's one from YouTube. Simranjeet asks, how do we prove the blind self attributes to people if we are meeting them for the first time, like in an interview? He says he's been told that he's very good at marketing, but he hasn't done it professionally. How should he brand himself in marketing?
Absolutely. So in that situation, there's a couple of things that you can do. If it's the case where he has evidence of having done that work, then it's very much a case of getting a third-party testimonial. So powerful, because what happens is when you're sitting in an interview and you've got a testimonial on the desk, that person is in the room with you. Right? It's like that person is in the room with you, vouching for you, waving that flag. If, however, it's the case where he has this marketing experience, but it's not yet proven in the workplace, that's where volunteering is extremely powerful. So doing some sort of marketing related volunteering role for a while, because what happens, you see, is that because you are investing that precious personal time, you get access to potential sponsors and mentors who can then come back and vouch for your work when you're in an interview. If you do a volunteer role and it goes well, people will be a reference. So, and it's a really good way for people new to Canada to start getting those references and getting those testimonials.
Okay, we have another question from another attendee. Wants to know, what are the key tips to navigating being a first-time manager, particularly doing this in a new country for them, Canada?
So essentially, in terms of personal brand, and yes, it is hard when you first come. And again, I use myself. I came into a management role when I first came to Canada, and it was a culture shock. Business practices, unspoken rules of the Canadian workplace. So one of the things that I would suggest is really start to expand your network. So I'm not sure what field the person who asked the question is in, but one of the things that I found that really helped me is to really start expanding your networks, talking to people, getting some mentoring. How does it work here? Because it works each country is very different. So, look for a mentor, start building your network, start having those exchange forums to understand more how to navigate. But if it's the case where you're also new, one of the things that you can be doing is writing about your strengths, writing about what you're good at, creating content, creating a blog, so that you're getting that subject matter expertise out there in a very easy and semi-formal way. So that's what I did when I first came. I started writing, and that really helped with the exposure and the profile, and also building confidence, because when you come first of all, it's about confidence building. So you start with your strengths, but you have to know what they are first.
Amazing. We're getting lots of questions, Jenny. Please type your questions on the Zoom link, or you could type it on the YouTube live stream. Okay, the next one is from Cara Duboulet. She wants to know, how do you attempt to rebrand, for instance, from an accounting professional to a business improvement consultant? So somebody changing their career stream, what do they do?
Absolutely. So that's a great question, excellent question, and I can answer it with absolute confidence, having somewhat done that a little bit myself. So I am a CPA, very proud to be a CPA, but interestingly enough, through my volunteering work, I actually now work in workplace diversity and inclusion. So I actually have done similar to what the lady is suggesting. And so there are a number of ways that you can do that. My route was through volunteering, because what I hadn't realized is that, and I wasn't thinking about these terms when I set up Black Female Accountants Network, but in the cold light of day, it is a diversity and inclusion initiative. It absolutely is, right? It is focusing on an underrepresented part of the community, and it's about economic empowerment and leadership development. So what I realized was something that started with looking to build the community and build the profession within that community has a very strong D&I dimension. And then that became attractive to AICPA, where I serve on the National Commission of D&I, and also the work that I do in the immigration space. So the simple answer is you can use volunteering as that career change pathway. Some people use extra certifications, extra training as well, and some people use a combination.
Right. Jenny, today in today's world of influencers and social media, is social media an important platform for you to build your personal brand? And we have another follow-up question from Sweta Siddharthan. She wants to know, how do you develop your personal brand on a professional social media platform? I'm
Absolutely.
guessing LinkedIn.
Sure. So first of all, yes, social media is a phenomenal way to gain exposure. However, I'm always going to go back to the fact that you absolutely have to understand, though, first of all, what your unique selling proposition is, because it's like anything, if you're taking a product to market and it's not clear what that product is doing, who the target audience is, what its benefits are, it's very hard when you get into that environment to be able to be interacting in the right way and in a way that does not cause confusion or mixed signals. So you still need to do the work of understanding who you are. What do people know you for, right? What do people know you for? What are you good at? Be really clear and intentional with that, because then when you go onto social media, you understand then and you have a plan as to who you want to interact with, which influencers you want to follow, and really what message you are looking to get out on social media. And this is where a lot of people, unfortunately, haven't really kind of taken those initial steps. And then it's a very sort of confused, non-productive, because you can spend hours and hours and hours on social media and not achieve anything, right?
Yeah.
So really do the groundwork first. And then in terms of the second question, yes, you absolutely can develop your, again, once you've established what it is, you can absolutely then develop it further with social media. So for instance, again, in my case, how I come to be working with a US-based association every year, helping with developing a very successful credential was purely through social media, because I knew who I was, what I stood for. And then when I went to market and said, I would love to get involved in this, here's what I do, here's what I'm good at, here's what I stand for, here's what I'm known for, they came back and said, yeah, we'd love to have you on board. So it's really important to do that homework first.
Okay. And Jenny, you shared your story of being petrified of public speaking. Sonia, David wants to ask you, in addition to volunteering yourself as a speaker, did you attend Toastmaster? Did you join any kind of a skill building course to refine your public speaking skills?
Funnily enough, I did not. And it's, I can't even explain why I did not. I think maybe because at the time where I was working, there wasn't a Toastmasters that was easy for me to get to in terms of after work. I think the timings didn't work out. I know Toastmasters is very, very well respected. I've got some people in my network who are very, very evangelical about Toastmasters and have used it and have really benefited. I honestly just did it through practice, so just self-taught. So yeah, again, depending on how you feel, your comfort zone, it can come in any number of ways. I think with my situation, because I'm linked to the professional bodies through accounting, because I'm a CPA, I almost had that safe space to practice and maybe fail and really not you know, not crash and burn. Likewise, within Black Female Accountants Network, we say to the ladies, every moment, every speaking moment, ladies, is a public speaking moment. If you're introducing yourself, this is your first meeting, come to the front. So we're always practicing because it's a safe space. So it really does depend on the environments that you have available to you. You can do it formally or informally. You know, it doesn't matter which.
Okay, let's take up one more question before we again go back to discussing your unique selling proposition. One attendee wants to know, can you use your blind spot to navigate your branding?
So it depends. It depends. Sometimes it can be a bit of a hard sell because it's something that you know and you feel really confident about it, but have you taken the steps to make other people aware of it, right? So again, you can, as long as you understand what it is, how it relates to the goal that you're looking to achieve, because then you're going to have to work out, okay, how do I now message this to other people to get them on side? Human beings by nature are looking for evidence. So it's either that you can provide the evidence or you have people that can give testimonials and vouch for your work.
Okay, great. I think let's take the second poll question for this webinar. I want to know what is the reason of our viewership today? What do they want to learn about personal branding and why is it important to them? We'll quickly put up the question up on your screen and you can vote for the answer that matches your current situation. We want to know what is the most important reason for you to develop your personal brand? Is it to manage your online reputation? Is it to improve your visibility in your profession? Is it to identify and leverage new career building opportunities? Is it to be an industry role model? Or is it to own your story, your narrative, like how Jenny, you spoke about, and very soon we're going to be going into the strategic tips of actually building that brand and finding your story and owning your narrative. So let's quickly bring up that poll question. coming back to the USP point, Jenny, what are some really actionable tips that you can give to our viewers today? How do they start identifying and doing that inner work?
Absolutely. So literally, it is as simple as getting a piece of letterhead paper, drawing those four boxes, and just starting to document. And you know what's really powerful? If you put it on a, if you happen to have some flip chart or Bristol board lying around, not saying you go to the shop specially for that, not in this season, you can use paper, but put it somewhere where you can see it every day and add to it. Because here's the thing, you're not going to remember everything you're good at in one hit. So don't do yourself that disservice by treating it as a one-time exercise, because we all have a story, we all have a journey. So you put it somewhere that you can see, and over a few days you keep documenting. You'll be amazed what you come up with. The other thing you can do as an action step in this season where we can't see anybody, you know, through the catch-up calls that you may be having, you know, you might decide based on some of the things that appear in your SWOT, oh, that's interesting. Like to understand a little bit more about that and deep dive. And then you might call a former colleague, you know, you're catching up. How are they doing? Are they staying safe? And then you say something like, do you remember that project that we worked on? And I was just thinking about that the other day. And I'm actually trying to think about, you know, we were so successful with it. I was trying to think about what were those underlying skills that we used that made us so successful. You know, what were the attributes that we brought to the table? And have that conversation with somebody. You will be amazed as to what you will find out. Again, you go and add it. You know, that's something else that you add to your portfolio. Because remember, how we see ourselves is only one dimension. To get the full dimension, we also need to ask others, which is why I've put the thing about get help, right? So that is a really good way of connecting with other people in this season, finding out how they are, but also getting some information that helps you as you look to develop your personal brand.
Okay. Jenny, your personal brand, we need to communicate it to a professional audience, but how do you draw the line, you know, because it's your personal values, your beliefs, how do you make it authentic to your personality and yet relevant to your professional audience?
Exactly. So I think the way to do that is really what we were discussing earlier about authenticity. You know, don't be fake. Don't be fake. We're all professionals. We're all highly intelligent people. And, you know, fake brings distrust and it brings a lack of integrity. So keep it authentic. One of the best ways of keeping something authentic is to tell a story. So I have shared live that I was terrified of public speaking. But you know what? People respect people who show some vulnerability and say, you know what, this was a struggle for me. So keep the message authentic, keep it genuine, tell stories. Professionals love stories. Professionals love to hear journeys that people went through as part of their professional experience. So if you wanted to communicate something about yourself, telling a story around that particular professional situation is a really, really good way of doing it, because then you say, and here's what I learned from it, and here's what I would do differently. Because then that's advice that you're now not just, I guess, acknowledging for yourself, but you're passing on to others. So now you become a resource for others. That increases your personal brand equity. Anything that you can do where you become a resource to others is huge for personal brand equity building. Just this afternoon, somebody sent me a blog. So one of my, someone on my LinkedIn network had written a blog. I think she'd written it for the first time and she sent it to me. And it was about leadership. And I said to her, this is phenomenal. You know what, I'm going to contact our communications editor within Black Female Accountants Network, see if we can share it for you across all our platforms. We have 1,200 members. And she, her whole persona just lit up at that, because now I'm helping her, right? I could have just said, yeah, that's a great blog, and it's just a one-to-one conversation, but I'm offering to help this lady build her personal brand by saying, you know, we have presence across all 4 platforms. I'm gonna ask our editor if she can share it for you. That's how you start to build exposure and build your professional persona with others.
Yeah. And I guess the takeaway is to, exercise your personal brand from an intent of giving and sharing.
Yes.
You spoke about volunteering being an essential route to actually pivoting to the kind of personal brand, the desired personal brand that
Yes.
you're aiming for. Or we have another follow-up question from Simranjit Singh. He wants to know, where can we find these volunteering opportunities which are specific to our weaknesses or something that we want to brand ourselves in? He wants to know, how did you find these specific volunteering opportunities on public speaking?
Absolutely. So I think in my case, because I'm in a regulated profession, and so there is an association, so Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, they do a number of conferences, mentoring events, speed networking, and they're constantly looking for speakers. So I had the opportunity through that pathway. Now, there are many other pathways. One of the resources that is really good in Canada is called Charity Village. So Charity Village is a website that details all the volunteer opportunities across the whole of Canada, not just Ontario. So, be it individual contributor, be it a board position, but Charity Village is really a very powerful resource. And then, of course, the other way is through networking. As you expand your network and find out what other people are doing. So for instance, when I was building the network, Black Female Accountants Network, and started to get approached by ladies who, wanted to help, wanted to volunteer, had some skills they wanted to improve on. So again, networking is also very powerful as well.
Excellent. Now let's go through some ways to build your personal brand. We see a lot of that happening on LinkedIn today. Can you share with us some real life examples of people you may have advised or guided into building and then communicating their personal brand and what they did?
Absolutely. So in the workshops that I've run in the past, one of the things that always is so rewarding and surprising is how much we all as human beings really underestimate what we have to offer and everything that we have. We're so busy focusing on what we don't have, we forget everything that we do have. And so one of the things that I bring out when I run my workshops is to remind people through the work that we do in the workshops exactly how much equity and brand assets they actually own. And based on the various types of work that we've mentioned and the steps, they're able to then come up with how they want to show up. So I mentioned what I stand for. They equally do that exercise. They're then able to then go to social media and start writing to that effect, starting to communicate on other people's posts to that effect. Because remember, once you understand what you represent and what you stand for, when you see a post, you're going to know if that post resonates with you or not, and you're going to feel very confident in contributing a perspective to whatever is being discussed. So by doing that, you show subject matter expertise, you show your awareness of the topic, and you build your profile. So getting involved in those conversations, either through posts, LinkedIn groups, those types of things, those are all profile building opportunities in the spaces that you're looking to represent and where you want to be known.
Jenny, if you had to wrap up this conversation, what is the one key takeaway, the headline to take away from this webinar for our viewers today?
Absolutely use this
time. Especially given in our virtual world today, given how times have changed, what is your advice to them?
Exactly. Absolutely, in this time that we've been given, and we have to see it as a gift, to just use all that unused travel time, all the things that we had to do before, use it to pause, self-reflect, and really work out who you are. Work out who you are and what you represent so that the best version of yourself is able to show up to the world every day.
Amazing. Jenny, thank you so much. It was an insightful and absolutely wonderful session. I'm sure so many of you who joined us have gained excellent insights from Jenny's experience and her expertise. Jenny is a personal branding coach and a workshop facilitator, and you were watching us on Cafe New Canadians, a virtual event series. We're coming to you since the past couple of weeks, since we've been working from home and the world has moved to the virtual, to the remote world. And in the coming weeks, we'll bring you more exclusive virtual chats with experts on topics like improving your productivity when you're working from home, like networking in the virtual world, and lots more to help you reach your career goals. And
very much.
you can, thank you, Jenny. You Canadians, you can also catch us on Telegram. That's the link to follow. We're also available on other social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Please engage with us there. Let us know how you found today's session and what kind of topics you want to listen to in upcoming weeks, and maybe identify some experts that you're interested in. I'm sure, Jenny, your session was excellent, and there will be requests to get you back again. Also,
thank you so much.
Newsletter. Also subscribe to your newsletter. It comes up every month with our top stories and also a host of other resources to follow on settlement, on education, on employment, and lots more in the whole newcomer universe. All right, that was Cafe New Canadians. Thank you for joining us. For those of you joining us on Zoom, as soon as you leave, there will be a survey that will pop up. So you're giving your feedback. It will help us improve our upcoming sessions. Thank you so much. Stay home and stay safe.